Hey guys, it's your boy Cisco again here with another episode of the Code 3 Club, and today I have a special guest. His name is Ryan. He works for a police department in Orange County.
Hey guys, how's it going? Just here to talk with Cisco about some of the things transitioning from EMS to the police department, and even before EMS, getting into that process, and just trying to help you guys out that have some questions.
Sounds good. So they don't know, but we know. So we actually worked together for maybe about a year and a half, 2 years or so on an ambulance on a box. But total, you have more EMS experience, right? So how long were you an EMT for?
So I was an EMT for almost 4 years. I came up on almost 4 years doing the ambulance thing. And before that, I was working just out of a family-owned restaurant. Started off as a busboy, became a cook, and then decided I wanted to do something else.
What was the best part of working on the restaurant? Because I used to work in restaurants too, and I know what my favorite part was: the free food.
Oh, that's always the best. Yeah, you got to get into that was the thing. Busboy, don't get free food, but if you're a dishwasher, free food.
Are you eating the food when it comes for you to wash it, or when are you eating this food?
Yeah, no, the restaurant actually gave you fresh food sometimes, so you didn't have to do the little tidbits that were left behind by people. But so becoming a cook, that was fun. And ultimately it's interesting because you don't realize the things that just working in a restaurant might help in something like EMS, going through interview processes, things like that, transitioning to EMS, where that experience helps, can actually help you. So you can use any type of experience in interviews. That was a big thing too. So an example, when I was an EMT transitioning place that we worked, so I went from working like a day shift ambulance, transitioning to a 24-hour ambulance in a fire station. So that was an interview process for us, right? So we both did that same process, interviewed. And during that interview process, you get interviewed by the captains, right, at the fire station. So one of the main things fire stations are worried about, hey, can you cook? They find out you're a cook, and they're like, oh, this guy's coming on.
I brought that on to my interview too.
Yeah.
But even when we were together in the station, I always felt like you were the better cook than I was.
No.
and I went to school for it.
I didn't necessarily enjoy cooking. That was the thing. I could do it, but I did not like it.
See, I like cooking.
That was I know you did. And that was the difference between us, I think, is that I just did the basic things and followed instructions, and that's how I cooked. I could tell you liked it more.
I'm trying to remember my last meal. My last meal at the station before I got picked up. It was like 2 different kinds of ribs.
Yeah, I think I saw pictures of this.
It was like the five cheese macaroni and cheese with 3 different kind of pastas. There was like roasted Brussels sprouts.
Dang.
Oh, it was
How much did that one cost?
No, it actually was pretty cheap. I remember I charged. It was, I think it came up to like $6 a head.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah, I know. And it was just the 5 of us.
Yeah. Right. I remember, did you ever get partners where all of a sudden you're paying like over $20 a head for meals?
Yeah.
And how pissed everyone would be.
A lot of the times it was those overtimers. When we'd get the overtimers from other oh yeah, we'll go cook.
Even
cool.
For us, it was the box guys. There was some guys, obviously not naming names or anything, but there was some guys that would be in there and they would come out with like $25 a head meals.
It's like it defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
One meal that I really liked was I remember I worked with Brian once, and he made like seared tuna steaks.
Oh yeah.
I think it was like $10 a head, but it was super good. He made like he combined the pre-packs of the Asian salad and the Southwest.
Yeah.
So like a Southwest and an Asian salad together. Oh, my mouth is watering.
People listening to this podcast are like, is this a food podcast or like about working in an ambulance? But once you start working on an ambulance, you realize, and especially when you're in a fire station, the food is very important.
Oh, and this is a little side note. So when when we were working together, I would pick up when we got that new area. I'd work some 24s, or even 24s, and they don't have stoves.
Really?
For those people listening to this that aren't in EMS right now actively, if you work a day car or a night car, know that you are probably not going to be at a station. And if you are, you will not have a stove. At most, you'll have a sink and a microwave.
Yeah.
Bacon takes 30 seconds per bacon strip to cook. Okay? So I used to make omelets and bacon. You put 5 bacon strips, 30 seconds each. So what's that, 2.5 minutes? So 30 seconds per bacon strip and about a minute per every 3 eggs. That might help you out one day.
Yeah, that brings up a whole different issue of getting into EMS, that you can be either really good or really bad with your nutrition, you know? Because I worked the day car for a while, and I think about a year I was working the 12-hour cars in one of the cities, and it just turned out to be, it's difficult, you know, like you're getting hungry multiple times out of the day. So it's difficult to pack food to constantly have throughout the day. And a lot of times you're tempted to go fast food, and there's guys that only do fast food. And so it's a hit on your body, you know?
Did they ever tell you in EMT school, if there's food, eat it, and if there's a restroom, use it?
Oh, yeah.
I remember that's what they were telling, like when I was still in EMT school, they're like, hey, we're busy. This is what happens. If there's a restroom, even if you don't have to go, you use it. And if there's food, you eat it.
Oh, yeah.
So that probably contributes to the culture.
Yes. And you know what's interesting too is the hospitals have food. And so a lot of times you'd see the hospital food. You'd think it'd be healthy. That's some of the worst stuff.
You know, we don't have EMS lounges where I work.
Really?
None of the hospitals in my area have.
We're spoiled over here.
I remember some of the hospitals had private lounges. Like there's a hospital in Norwalk. They have a break room that's just for a certain ambulance company.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think a lot of them go through changes, because I think a lot of the people on the ambulance ruin it because they're taking too much food. Yeah. So all this, it's very interesting to think back to, because now I'm not in that side of it.
All right,
so we're going to go off on tangents quite a bit here.
Yeah, we probably will. This will be so technically this is going to be like the second published episode of the podcast. So like the first one's like 20-ish minutes or so.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, we're aiming for 20 to 30 minutes. Okay. This one's going to be like an hour and a half or so. So this will definitely be one people can listen to on transfers or something.
Right.
Okay. But so food, we're going to get hungry. What made you transition into the police department? Because when we were working together, for most of that time period, you wanted to go fire.
Yeah, I was going fire pretty much the entire thing going on to the ambulance. I thought I wanted to go fire the whole time, you know? And ultimately it goes back to originally, even before the ambulance, thinking about what I wanted to do. I thought military, maybe. I went to recruiter's office, almost went in military route. And then I was like, well, what do I want to do after the military? And then I was like, oh, firefighting. Like that was something I wanted to do when I was super young, and then kind of got away from it because it's one of those like, oh, it's just every kid wants to be firefighter.
Did you wear the Halloween costume?
You know, probably at some point. But, and then once you really get into thinking about it, you're like, well, you just need to put in the work and time, and it's actually a possibility, you know? So then it became a real option. And so then once I decided, okay, this is something I wanted to do after the military, then talking to people, it was like, okay, 4 years in the military, is that more beneficial than what you can do 4 years in civilian life, you know? And talking to firefighters through that process, I think that's the biggest thing, is talking to people that are in the job that you want to get into. And that's what I did. I talked to a bunch of different firefighters to get their opinion. And not that joining the military would be like a bad thing or anything. I think it's another road or avenue that you could take to get to that spot. But talking to them, there's so many other things that I discovered you have to do. One of them being like EMT. I ended up getting my AS in the fire science, you know. So it's something where that decision to go fire was just, that's what I wanted to do, you know. That was stuck in my head, and I kind of closed off my mind to anything else. And because I put so much work towards that, I didn't really think about anything else. And the main thing that got me thinking, I would say, was once we were working in the fire station, we had some guys that were firefighters now that used to be police officers.
Yeah.
And they said they liked being police officers too. It's just they transition, you know? So, and now I know police officers that used to be firefighters. It goes both ways. And it's kind of that mindset that people have. It's the public service mindset. So a lot of the guys that are in the military, a lot of guys that are in fire, a lot of guys that are police, they kind of have that same drive for the public service that you can get in all those jobs. You can get fulfillment from all those positions, you know? So that was something that finally, responding to calls and like kind of looking at what police do and everything, I was like, hey, I'd actually enjoy that, you know? So being open to that and then finding that right department that opened up, I would say, looking at the fire side, I was willing to basically work anywhere and do the job anywhere for fire, right? But for police, I knew I didn't want to work in a department that I was going to get burnt out easily because the community doesn't like them. Like, I didn't like that part of police. I liked the job that they do and everything, but I didn't like the amount of, especially now, you know, the amount of distrust and things like that and for the police. So I knew I wanted a community that would back me up, because I mean, you would get burnt out so quick. You couldn't make that into a career. If you did, it would be super difficult, right? That was kind of my mindset. And people do it, and it's crazy to me, you know, like the amount of stress, added stress that the job already puts on, but the added stress into the communities that you work in not liking you or not trusting you, that makes it even harder. So I knew I wanted to go into a city that didn't have that. So I was very picky on where I was willing to be a police officer. And it worked out that the place that the number one place I wanted to work, I ended up getting hired at. So
That's dope.
that was the thing. And now I love it. And once you get into it, you don't realize how much you might like it even more. You know, that was my mindset, not really knowing too much about the job, because like, you know, going into EMT, you don't know until you're in it. You know, you can hear stories from everyone and kind of get an idea or think you have an idea of how it is. But once you do it, then you really understand it, you know? It's
like, I feel like a lot of EMS and EMT school. Have you ever seen that's like that pawn shop show? It's like in Vegas.
Yeah.
There's like that dad, like unfortunately,
Pawn Stars.
It's Pawn Stars. I think one of the guys just like passed not too long ago.
Yeah.
But there's this meme that's like, those bastards lied to me. I feel like a lot EMS. It's a lot of that. Oh, you're gonna love it, the pay and this and that, and then it's like,
yeah,
oh, those bastards lied to me.
Yeah, that's what you need to be up front on this podcast to let everyone know of the downsides. You know, like there's huge upsides, but a lot of people get into it for the wrong reasons, because people think that, oh, this is something where you can make decent money at. Yeah, you can make decent money because you're working overtime, but actual pay-wise,
all the money's in overtime.
I don't think most people realize the hourly rate of ambulance operators. And so it's something where, unless you know or told ahead of time, you really don't know until you're applying and you're like, wait a second, I'm going to make $10 an hour.
Yeah, if you want money, look into like phlebotomy.
Yeah.
Dude, one of my buddies just transitioned from EMT to doing phlebotomy, like just phlebotomy.
Yeah.
But they pay for him to keep his EMT cert because he's an ER tech, right? Mm-hmm. But he's also like single function phlebotomist every once in a while. His phlebotomist rate is like $22 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
With like no prior phlebotomy experience. But it might be because, you know, he is an EMT.
Right.
And they're like bumping him up. But I'm like, $22 an hour. He's working like 8-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dang, you can't. It's hard to beat.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is the opportunities that EMT isn't just a, hey, you're going to work on an ambulance type of position. It's something where you have the opportunity to work in hospitals. You can work on the ambulance. It opens up a bunch of different job opportunities and experience that any type of, whether you're going police, fire, for me, it was the job that allowed me to work full time and go to school full time and get my degree, and that was huge. And to know the general idea of what I wanted to do, it was perfect experience. Cause when you're technically, you can do it when you're 18, right?
Yeah.
So to get that type of on the job experience, there's not very many positions or opportunities for people that are 18 years old to get that type of in-field experience. And I think that's the most important thing over like trying to make money at that point, So, yeah.
So one thing. So I was thinking about this on my way over here.
Mm-hmm.
Being a police officer is pretty dangerous. I think so.
Can be, yeah. Being a firefighter is pretty dangerous too. They all have their dangers.
So it's like even, so this is what I was thinking about on my drive over here was, so somebody calls 911, we show up. If the call is dangerous, whatever, we request a SO or PD,
right,
or whatever, and we wait for the incident to be clear. Right. Do you want to go in? It's like, no, we'll wait till PD tells us over the radio.
Yeah, always. The main thing is when you're on the box or on the engine, you don't have anything to really defend yourself. So that's why you don't risk going in, because you don't have body armor, you don't have a gun, you don't have a taser, you don't have OC spray, you don't have all this stuff to protect yourself. So we do.
I just think that's so wild. Like I was thinking about it, I'm like, to be the police officer, and like when those notes come in, sometimes they're crazy, and you're like, I'm not going in.
Yeah.
And it's like, but
can't say that when you're on the PD side.
Yeah.
Of it.
So I was thinking about, I'm like, that's Ryan. Ryan's going in there right now. He's gonna clear us.
Yeah, and I like that. I like because it's you're really everything you're getting through. There's no holding you back. You respond to everything. And that's one of the main things I think I like about PD is that you're responsible for the people you work with, but yourself also. So safety for us is number one, obviously. And it's just showing up and doing your job to clear the scene for other people. If it's a medical aid that you're trying to clear a scene for, you're just doing your job to clear the scene so fire can get in there. And it's just a mindset. Your mindset is just to help whoever needs help. I think that's the mindset for everyone in EMS, fire, PD. So it's cool. It meets everything that I wanted it to do.
So then you think your department has like a good relationship with the boxes that you guys have in the fire department? Because I can't remember if you're with the bigger agency or the small agency.
Yeah, so the city I work for, they have their own fire and PD, so everyone's super close.
Super.
Yeah, everyone's really close. We have an outside, it's not like where we worked in the city, the ambulance isn't owned by the city or anything. It's an outside ambulance private company. But they just transitioned to where that outside company is within the fire stations.
Okay, so everybody's real tight.
Yeah, so everyone is close, and yeah, but for us, there's no back and forth between PD and fire, and it makes it really enjoyable.
Okay, so then what's like a regular day for you? Because like when we were on the private side, and we were at like on the day card, you show up to the main, you do your checkout. If you're the driver or if you're the attendant, you do your thing. And then we were on the 24 together, almost the same thing, but you just showed up to the station. I have no idea what your typical day or your start of shift is. Yeah,
so that's the other benefit too, going from EMS to PD. Everything's kind of similar, right? So the way the protocols are to make sure when you show up to shift that you're whatever unit you're going to be in, you have to do a rig checkout, make sure you have all the equipment. That's all the same, right? So every department's going to be a little bit different on their schedules. You're never going to work 24-hour shifts as PD, so that's different from fire. But most popular, I would say, are 3 12-hour shifts or 4 10-hour shifts. But if you're working the 3 12-hour shifts about once a month, some departments do it more often, you pick up an extra shift to make up those hours for the month. So I like it because I'm home every single day. Like, I get to go home every day, compared to when you're working in the fire station. You can clump up the hours, and you're working 72 hours straight was technically what we were allowed to do on the ambulance, but sometimes you can work more. So I like being able to come home every day. And that was another big difference, was the hours. I mean, at one point, I think I was averaging like 90 hours a work week, on the ambulance, compared to now, like 3 weeks out of the month, I'm working 36 hours, so
that's pretty good.
That's a huge difference, especially, I'm not completely there yet. I am married, but I don't have kids or anything. But if you have kids, like, you're making it so your wife is doing it on her own for a few days at a time if you're out of a fire station working constantly, whereas now I could be technically home every single day.
Be the family man.
Right. But not to say, 12 hours is still a long shift. So if you want a full-time sleep, you don't get very much time to hang out. If you are going to get a full night's sleep, you're basically sleeping 6 hours and then have to get up, get ready, and then go again, So, and depending on your drive times, things like that, the 12 hours can still be a long shift. So, but yeah, that's how the shift layout works. It's kind of similar. So, how in the fire station, we would kind of go around the table in the morning at that time and kind of lay out what's going to happen. Yeah, you have the debrief. So we have briefing before our shifts as well. So you do the same thing. Anything that's need to know, you go over, and we have the city kind of laid out into different beats, like split up. So you have officers for each beat, and then you have cover units. You might have K9, specialty positions like that. So everyone like learns about their beat, basically.
So is it beat like your first due?
What was that?
Is it beat like your first due, pretty much? That's what it kind of sounds like.
So a schedule will go out, and you sign up based on seniority of what the schedule is. So the beat units, it's just whether or not you want to be a cover unit or beat unit, and who picks what first, So you never know.
So there's like posting, right? Police officers, it's like posting, right? Because I know you guys aren't just chilling at your main or your hub or whatever.
Right. So this is where it gets different for every department, and it changes for the sizes, because huge departments are going to have like substations, whereas smaller departments are just going to have one police station, their main station to go in and out of. And so for us, we just have one station. There's no substations. So the beats are split up to where, yeah, you should stay in the beat, but you're pretty much driving around. There's nowhere for you to like stop and post or anything. And that's where, working on the box, you're just responding to calls, right? You're waiting for that tone out or the page, depending on where you're at, getting calls from. So for us, you get the calls on top of, you're expected to go out and do your own work or find your own work, So between calls, you're doing things like traffic stops. And if you see someone walking down the street and you feel like sometimes the hair just sticks up on the back of your neck, you're like, I should talk to that person, that's the type of stuff you're doing in between calls. There's cities where you can't do that. You can't do the proactive work. There's cities where it's just call to call and it's booked up, like you have a call list on the computer and you're deciding, your dispatchers basically are deciding what needs to be handled first. So there's a lot of departments that you can't be proactive and do your own work, because either there's not enough officers, or, you know, who knows? It's just a busy city, you know. But the cities where you can be proactive, I think that's those are the cities that have the lower crime rates, you know, because it's more preventive work than just reaction work.
Do you feel like there's a shortage of police officers? Like with fire and EMS, it's like we always need more EMTs, we always need more medics, but there are tons of people trying to do it. And then with fire, especially in California, it's so competitive. So there isn't really a shortage of positions because everything is filled. Do you feel like that with PD, that like we need more officers, or do you feel like departments have trouble hiring people?
I don't think there's any trouble there's a lot of people when you open up spots that apply. It's not necessarily trouble of finding police officers. I would say the environment today probably does impact the quality a little bit, you know, but there's still really good people that are wanting to be police officers, you know. So I think it's something where cities could use more police officers, but it always, for both fire and police, it comes down to funding, you know, and whether or not they're willing to fund to have more police officers. And a lot of times they can't. They just don't have the ability because it's cities that are probably already bankrupt, basically in debt, you know, so how are they going to justify spending more money? I think that's the real difficulties. But you could always benefit from having more, obviously, you know, quicker response times across the board for fire and police if you hire more, you know. But it all comes down to money of what the cities can afford. Yeah.
Very interesting. And then how long have you been off probation now?
It's been a year now. No, I'm trying to think. Off probation now.
You left like 3, 4, 5 months, I think, before I left.
Right. So the whole process of that, a police academy is 6 months long, you know, so that changes for every department of when probation starts and ends. For us, the probation starts as soon as you're done with the academy. You have a year. Once the academy's done, your probation starts at a year. So I've been off for just over 6 months then. Yeah, off probation, because I've been out of the academy for about a year and a half. So it's nice being off probation, I can tell you that. Just the feeling of, okay, at least the department trusts me enough to take me off probation, you know, like, I don't know. It's listening to the different probations, fire compared to police, and then even other departments within, you know, everyone's probation's different. So you talk to one police department's probation, totally different from the probation I went through, you know, and same goes for fire, listening to the guys that are on probation doing the fire thing. It's it's different everywhere you go, basically, you know. So my department is kind of like a family. It's a smaller department, so no one's trying to get under your skin. Everyone's more helpful than anything, I would say. If you make a mistake, they'll be on you to fix it. You know, they aren't just going to let you make mistakes. But there's a lot of departments you hear stories of just doing things to mess with you, you know. And I didn't experience any of that necessarily, but I have heard stories of other departments where that happens. Yeah, you just got to grind through it. Okay,
so like on the fire side, we always hear show up to work early, like bring coffee or donuts on your first day, trying like not to drink coffee throughout the day.
Right.
But because you're the probie, always have to do. What are like some of those little things on the PD side? Or because like it's so different, right? Because for us to show up to the station, if we're not out grocery shopping or running errands or running calls,
right,
we're at the station. But it's like like you said, you're like a proactive department, get to do preventative stuff. So you're out there.
Right.
What is like some of those like probie things that you like?
The main thing is staying busy. Don't be lazy. And I think that's across the board with any department is especially when you're trying to prove yourself, you got to show that you are not lazy. So you're out being proactive if you're not running the calls. And when you are running the calls and you have a group of officers on scene, like, you handle it, like, do as much as you can and show that you're willing to do as much as you can and that you're able to do as much as you can and do it well, So I think that's the main thing. That there's not so much. Fire's interesting because, like you said, it's things like, oh, hey, you're going to be the guy that does the dishes all the time, or, just little things like that. It's not like that. Unless you go to other departments, like I said, like some departments, they expect you to have coffee for briefing ready for everyone. It depends on who is leading you, basically, who's your superior officer and what they expect from you, but for me, it was never like that. It was never the little things of doing coffee. They didn't really expect that. Being in the fire station, you still kind of do it just because that's what you're used to, So the main thing is just don't be lazy.
Okay. I think that's a good takeaway for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, fire academy is different. There isn't really like an academy type thing for EMS. It's just like EMT school or paramedic school. What would you say would be beneficial to prepare you for going to a police academy? And like, are they good for all over? For like a private fire academy, usually they're good for like a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. For certain departments, like I know some departments are like, if you haven't done your fire academy within like 3 years, it doesn't count.
Right.
But they're pretty much good for the entire state. Is it similar with a police academy?
Yeah, you go to its post certification, which is the California post certification, meaning if you go to one of those academies, you're good across the state. I think CHP has like their own academy, so that might be one of the only ones that are different from that. Colleges offer it. A lot of times sheriff departments have their own academies, but they're all California post approved. Mm-hmm. So as long as they're California post approved, you can technically send yourself through it and it meets that requirement, or you can get picked up. This is something different where the fire department, a lot of times you're almost expected to put yourself through an academy, around here at least. Some departments aren't that way, but around here it seems like you're expected to put yourself through an academy and then get hired. Not always the case, but I would say police, the majority are willing to actually put their recruits through academies. And that's whether or not that's because a police academy is 6 months compared to, I think, a regular full-time academy for fire is it 4?
Yeah, it's like just under 4,
about 4 months. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're putting yourself through a police academy, 6 months is a long time to be basically out of work. You can't work or do anything else, If you're expecting to be working while you're going to a police academy, you're going to have a rough time. Like, no one did it. I started with almost 100 people in my academy class.
It's huge.
Yeah, it was really big, and none of them tried to work. It was just a known thing, like, hey, you can't work if you're doing this. This is taking up all your time. So
there are no part-time?
No part-time. No academy? Yes, there's part-time academies.
But okay, obviously,
no one's working part-time or anything while they're going to a full-time academy. But yes, there are part-time academies that you can go to. I'm not well versed on who offers the part-time academies or anything, but it's something where, 6 months is a long time. I don't know how long. I think a part-time is like a year or something. Oh. I don't know if I want to do an academy for a year. Exactly. So you have, you got to do what you got to do. If you can't afford to take work off for 6 months, the main thing is try and get hired, and have them send you through an academy. So prepare yourself in the way that is going to get you hired. That's the biggest thing for academies. Stay physically fit. That's an obvious thing, but you got to work that resume basically to be able to get hired.
So do you feel it's advantageous to get your police academy on your own? Whereas like with fire, where we're at.
Right.
If you have your fire academy, that opens up the doors for all the small departments, and there are like lots of little pockets of small departments everywhere, and the big departments don't. So like if anybody asked me, hey, should I get my fire academy? I'd be like, yes, the moment you get your EMT, go straight to a fire academy, worry about paramedic later. You need this academy. Is it like for PD, it's like, oh, you can get it if you want. You can go do something else with your time.
I would say this is where it is very different from fire, because I would absolutely say, hey, you have to go to the academy. Like if you don't have anything else, like going to the academy is going to be one of the most beneficial things to try and get hired onto a fire department, right? So with PD, it can be. And the main thing I will say, we had people, it's called self-sponsored when you're sending yourself through the academy. You're not sponsored by a department, so you're self-sponsored. So those guys, a lot of departments that need to hire people will actually go to the academy grounds and try and recruit them. So that's one of the biggest beneficial things, that if you're kind of in an area where you're just not hearing back or, from departments, and you're applying and trying and it's just not working, if you have the ability to go to the academy, that shows a lot, right? That shows a lot of heart that you really want to do this. You're willing to spend your own money, take time off work, that you're willing to do it. So that's the reason they will come to the academy and kind of pitch themselves. And it's kind of crazy to think about, because you're working so hard outside of the academy to try and get these people to notice you. And then all of a sudden they're showing up trying to pitch themselves to
it's
people.
Like, pick us.
And they pitch themselves, and then you still have to apply, and they interview you and see if you're going to be a fit. But you have a lot better probability to get picked up if you are in the academy. So it's not something where I'd say, no, don't go to the academy yourself. Don't put yourself through the academy. I think it could be very beneficial, but it is difficult because, like I said, you got to put 6 months off to the side from anything else, basically, and have to pay for it. So that's the main difference between the two of them.
Is there anything you can learn on your own before going into the police academy that helps? Like with fire, you can read the books, you can talk to your firefighters. But what, besides working out, 'cause I feel that's applicable for everything, right? You need to be in shape, especially if it's so long. PT is definitely going to be a big portion of it. What can you learn or do on your free time, like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year before deciding, hey, I'm going to go to the police academy?
Right. So something that can help is obviously the degrees that different colleges offer. You can do criminal justice and kind of get a baseline idea, like criminal law. That's always helpful. The other thing is, the obvious things, physical fitness, like you said. So just stay in running shape, push-ups, pull-ups. It's mainly those things. You're not expected to lift heavy weights or anything like that. It's a lot of cardio. Outside of that, you're going to be expected they'll train you technically. So to shoot a gun, right? So you're going to be shooting a gun. I would not have been comfortable going into it if I hadn't shot a gun beforehand, right? If the first time I touched a gun was in the academy, I feel like I would have been in trouble.
So did you see people coming in with zero firearm experience?
I don't think there was anyone that had zero firearm. You could tell the people that just did it a few times, compared to the ones that have always grown up kind of shooting. But it would definitely be beneficial to go through some type of firearms course and learn firearms, the safety of firearms, and how to handle them the right way, So I think that's something that could be beneficial on top of if you know the area you want to work, because everywhere is going to be a little different. If you go to LA, they're talking over the radio and just plain English, right? Over in Orange County, they're going to be talking using 10 codes and all these different 9 codes and, phonetic everything. The phonetics are different from LA to Orange County. So if you learn phonetics, depending on where you want to work, you look into those departments that you want to work for and are likely to get hired for. That's the hard part too, because you don't know where you're going to get hired, right? You're applying to these different places. So you don't want to be studying the wrong thing, because if you are studying phonetics for LA and all of a sudden you get hired in OC, you're going to have to break that habit of saying the phonetic alphabet the LA way. So you don't necessarily want that. You get 6 months to study, right? So a lot of times, like I said, the criminal law aspect and learning how to read cases and understand cases, that's helpful. You can learn penal codes, because that's the same across California. So if you know the different penal codes, the numbers, there's tons of stuff on the internet that's super beneficial to look into. Basic, if I'm going into a police academy, what should I know? You can research on the internet. The main thing is research. Whoever you get hired for, research them, because once you're in the academy, you are expected to know things about the department. You'll get quizzed on it in the academy about your specific department. That's the main thing, is that you have to be able to adapt. It's not just this is how you do it. That's my advice.
Okay. No, that was good. With some fire departments and like with some ambulance companies and stuff, after you put in a certain amount of time, you can promote to like FTO, or you can do supervisor, or sometimes you can switch into dispatch. Mm-hmm. And then with fire, same thing. You can take the engineer's test, or at some point become captain. What are like some of the promotional levels in PD? All I really know is like SWAT, or like SWAT medics. And I know those are like different specialties where like you can be SWAT, but not everyone offers a SWAT medic.
Right.
And some places like the fire agency does the SWAT medic, and I'm like, whoa.
Right. So those are specialty divisions, and this is the thing with police that is really interesting, in that it's different to every department you go to. So what they offer is going to be different than the next department, even right next door to them, So, and even with ranks, the way like LAPD does their ranks, they have something called Police Officer 1, Police Officer 2, things like that, compared to other departments that just have police officer and then corporal, so even ranks can change. And ultimately, you can be a field training officer. So that's something that you can get into just a few years on. You can start kind of training the guys that come in, that's a specialty thing. But actual rank wise, for us, you go police officer, corporal, sergeant, and then it goes lieutenant, captain, and chief. So
from like lieutenant up, those are more like administrative in the office type jobs. Okay.
Lieutenant up is pretty much administrative. They're allowed to go out whenever they want, but their main focus is administrative. Sergeant's pretty much the last position that you're going to be on a patrol aspect of things, And SWAT, like smaller departments, they're not usually going to offer things like SWAT positions. There are some places where as a county, you might have 3 or 4 different smaller departments get together and create a SWAT division. And so that's cool. But if SWAT's very important to you, and that's for sure something you want to do, you got to find a department that's going to offer that, because not every department's going to offer that. So if even canine, there's departments that don't have canines.
Oh, wow.
So that's something where if you want to go canine, you got to find a department that's going to offer that.
So I always felt like everyone would have.
Yeah, you would think, but something like canine, sometimes it's a liability, and it takes money, So ultimately, whether or not the city wants that, it's their decision, And all these things are something that you could work for a department, and all of a sudden it can be taken away, So you never know if it's that important to you. Things like SWAT, sheriff departments are pretty much always going to offer SWAT, right? Because they're huge. So if SWAT's that important, sheriff might be their route. But again, in sheriff, you're most likely going to have to be going to the jails first. You're not going to go straight to patrol. those are things that you have to look into and research and decide what you're okay with doing, So it's there's a ton of opportunities, I would say, in fire and police both. They offer so many specialties that you don't even know of until you're in the job and you're like, oh wait, that's a thing, yeah, I didn't know that was a job title. Everywhere you go are going to have different specialties, and you might not even be able to research them.
So we actually went on to Instagram and came up see if anybody wanted to ask any questions. So we're gonna wait. Oh look who asked a question.
Uh-oh.
So we don't gotta go these right now. We'll do that at the end, when and if. So the last serious question we'll do before we go into. I'm guessing he knows.
Yeah,
I'm interviewing you. So how useful do you feel that it was being an EMT for that amount of time before becoming a police officer?
I think in general it was really helpful. I don't think there's any other job that could be more beneficial leading into it, So outside of maybe if you became a jailer beforehand, for a police department, you get a feel of that department more. So if you're going to get picked up by that department, jailer might be beneficial. But EMS, we go code 3, depending on where you work, you go code 3 to every call you respond to, so that's something that not very many people get to do. And police department, you go code 3 more in the ambulance than in a police car. You get cleared code 3 not as often.
So you have to. So your dispatcher tells you, hey, you can go to this code 3?
Depending on the call, yeah, they'll dispatch you depending on what type of call it is, code 3 or not.
Can you upgrade, or is it
you can make the call yourself that you're going to upgrade. You have to announce it, but it's not as often. It's maybe a couple times a shift that you're going code 3 compared to however many calls you get when you're on an ambulance. So that's something where you can't get that experience anywhere else ahead of time. So that's beneficial, because when you're going through training, especially if you've never gone code 3 or haven't done it very often, you're going to have that in your head while you're trying to run scenarios through your head showing up to the call, and your mind's going to be scrambling. Whereas I had gone code 3 so many times that it was no big deal, so I could focus on, okay, what am I going to get into on this call, and what do I need to do to show my training officer that I know how to handle this. I could think about those things while I'm driving to it, because I'm not amped up while I'm going code 3. So that's something that was really beneficial. Another thing is just being able to not have tunnel vision, because on an ambulance you can get tunnel vision too, right? You show up to a call that's pretty serious call. It's easy to just focus in on that one thing. But once you do it enough times, you're able to take a step back, look at the broader picture. Okay, what else can we bring in here? What other tools do we have that can help us, or, things like that. So having your emotions in check, I think being on the ambulance helped a lot with that too. So you're able to talk on the radio better, because you're not, you remember you would hear people on the radio that you can tell you're like, oh, this person's freaking out right now, so that happens on the police side of it too. But if you just get used to it and it's just another call, and you treat it that way, and you talk the same on the radio every single call that you show up to, whether or not it's someone that has a knife or someone that's just a nosebleed on the ambulance, you have a basic call or an amped up call. You want to try and be the same, on the radio, that's ideal. And repetition is what's going to help the most with that. And I think that helped a lot spending the years on the ambulance. You just have that calm mindset, run everything with that calm mindset and be able to get out of that tunnel vision and look at the big picture of things. That's probably one of the biggest things that helped too. So definitely, even if you know that you want to go police, I think even being on the ambulance is something beneficial because you're still part of that whole entire EMS system, first responder, So if you want to go police, but the ambulance is something that intrigues you too, I think it's something that you don't want to just throw out because you think it's related to fire or medical, So I think a lot of police departments look at that experience and know that's valuable experience too. And I think it's something that helped me get hired with the department I'm with, that experience. So it's, overall, it's something that I would not go back and change, even if I knew I wanted to go police. So.
Okay. All right. So let's go to these, Instagram. So we put out the message on the Instagram, maybe like halfway through the podcast, so we might not have a lot of stuff, but we have 3 questions, 2 of them from the same person. Okay. First one, what's the dumbest call they've ever been on?
We can talk about the ambulance one.
Dude.
What's the dumbest call on an ambulance that we've been on? I mean, I think everyone's gonna talk about how. So a lot of times people call 911 and you don't know why they call 911, why that is their go-to to call 911. I mean,
I've had the batteries of my television remote died. One of them when I was back on the day cars was I ate a Chipotle burrito and my stomach really hurts. I'm full. I want to go to the hospital.
Right.
Those are like 2 off the top of my head.
And this makes me remember too how we kind of talked about how when people ask you these questions and you have to try and think back to like all the calls you've been on, I realize that my mind kind of just deletes like some of the calls I go on.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to remember all these calls.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting of trying to think back. You're like, man, I've ran thousands of calls, but I probably remember only a handful of them.
Let's see. We got our friend here. He says, how many times has he been beaten up?
Oh. Me personally, I have not been really beaten up. You get in fights a decent amount of time.
Altercations.
You get in altercations, and it's usually drunk people, so they don't go with the program a lot of time. But usually it's very quick, so it's not actually like you're throwing fists at someone. Our techniques are usually takedown and control techniques, so it's not and you don't try and do it one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna wait for backup if you know someone's gonna be that way. It doesn't always come out like that because he comes out of nowhere sometimes and you don't expect it, but a lot of times it's very quick and you don't actually get beaten up or anything.
That's good.
The biggest thing I've gotten is like a sprained ankle because I stepped off a curb.
Okay. Let's see. And then our same friend asked another question. We might have to remove this one from the podcast. Why do they call 911 for every ETOH rather than let them sleep or take them to jail?
So for the people that don't know ETOH, you can explain that it's just a drunk person, basically, someone that's been drinking. When we show up, we have criteria of whether or not we can just arrest someone for being drunk. It's for us in California, the penal code is 647F.
Oh, there you go. Fancy giving us the code.
Yeah. So if you look up that code specifically, it's pretty basic actually of what's required to be able to arrest someone. But everyone's going to have their policies for their departments that they work for. And if they're drunk to the point where they basically don't know who they are, like you can't take them to jail.
It's like GSF 3? No, GCS of 0.
Right.
They don't even get 3.
And that's something where that's helped as EMT in knowing like, hey, when is it beneficial to call the fire department and have medics like help this person, having that knowledge of what the fire department can do or can't do. So, but a lot of times you're just following protocol in that, hey, this person needs to go get checked out at the hospital before they come to jail. So even if they are just getting picked up by the ambulance, a lot of times those patients are still going to either get like a same kind of like a ticket, or they'll get taken to jail after the hospital. So it's not all the time that we're just like, oh, have the ambulance pick them up and then it's done.
It's like, done.
Right.
Okay. There you go. So turns out this post has been up for like 56 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And that was like halfway. So this has actually been long. So we've done a lot of talking in between. We've had to shut the podcast. But I mean, that's what they got. They got 3 questions. So that was it. Cool. We're going to bring it to a close. Before we shut everything off, Ryan, is there anything you want the public to know about you, about California, PD, anything you want to bring to attention, plant some more trees?
The only thing, I mean, police officers, a lot of them get bad raps or whatever, but everyone that I work with, I love working with, and they're just people doing their job, and it's not beneficial to try and go against what police officers want you to do. That's only going to get you in trouble.
Listen to what they tell you.
Just listen and follow instructions. And what I try and explain to people is the time and place to argue it is court. Don't argue it out on scene with the police officers. That's only going to hurt you. If you have an issue with something, that's what court's for, So, but other than that, police officers are people too.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. You heard it here first. So, Cisco and Ryan out.
All right. See you guys.